Jeez. I'm about to just start. We're doing
Hey Charlie, how you
a
doing?
live chat for brown bear season. I'm doing a live chat for brown bear season. So they hear you right now. So say hi, but let's
Hello.
watch what we say.
Well, Charlie, it's great to speak with you once again. We are gearing up for brown bear season on explore.org. Maybe within 2 or 3 weeks or so, we're going to have live cams from Brooks River in Katmai National Park. And I'm really looking forward to the bear cam season this year.
Who can't be excited for brown bear seasons? It's really a great annual event. You know, the bears and salmon almost bring the whole explore community so close together. It's always exciting, and there's so many unknowns. That's why I reached out and said, hey, we got to bring in Mike to kind of answer some questions, because I, for one, almost take for granted the process of hibernation and the journey, because when the cameras come on, we see the bears and we almost act like they were there. And I just thought it'd be really fun to kind of get into the backstory right now of the bear's journey, where they're coming from, and talk a little bit about hibernation and then expectations for the season. You know, the mantra being never stop learning, and I've never really asked these questions. So I guess if you don't mind, I could just start with hibernation. I mean, when do the bears know to get up? Do the babies get up first? Do the females get up? I mean, what is the process that triggers them awake? And tell me a little bit about their journey.
Well, it depends on the bear, more or less. Adult males seem to have like the shortest denning season out of all bears, and they might come out in the Katmai region. They might come out of their dens in March, and at that time of the year, the area is still pretty much locked in ice and snow. Especially this year, where it's more of an average winter compared to some of the winters we've seen up there in the past 10 years. So they might come out of the den and just find a frozen landscape still. And then it progresses through single adult females, subadult bears. And at this time of the year, there could be still like a couple of female bears with newborn cubs that are just coming out of the den right now. Females with newborn cubs stay in the den the longest, and that's probably to give their cubs a longer opportunity to grow inside of the den. They're safe inside of there from threats. They don't have to worry about traveling across the landscape without much food. So they stay in the den a long time. So most of those females with newborn cubs won't come out of their dens until May, and in rare cases, even June. But to get to like your first part of the question, you know, what sort of triggers that awakening process? You know, I don't think scientists are really fully know what triggers that, but it seems like bears have an internal circadian rhythm over the or circannual rhythm, maybe because it's over months, that allows them to slowly sort of ramp up from their fully hibernative mode in the middle of winter to a more active metabolism, which is what they might be experiencing right now. But that's a very slow process. It's certainly not like a switch that they can turn on and off. It may take them several weeks and sometimes several months to get back to a fully active metabolism. And that usually happens sometime in late winter is when that process starts to begin.
And in hibernation, it's really such a marvel. It's true that the bears can only breathe one time per minute. Is that correct? I mean, they really slow their bodies down. I mean, you share a little bit about that process and how, if I'm correct, they don't urinate, defecate, their kidneys shut down, the whole body's recycling. It's quite miraculous. Can you fill me in?
Yeah, it's almost like they're a different animal in the wintertime compared to summer. We think of bears um, as animals that have a physiology in the summer, you know, somewhat like our own or our dogs. they eat a lot, they urinate all the time, they defecate all the time. They have a lot of the bodily processes just like all mammals do. But in the wintertime, those things really just completely shut down. They don't urinate in the den, they don't defecate while they're hibernating, they don't eat or drink. Their kidneys almost completely shut down. They're not producing urine at that time. And if we were to be put into the same situation, that would be it for us. We would, just if we ignore the fact of what would happen to us if we stopped drinking water, even over a few days. If our kidneys aren't working, then we'll be slowly poisoned by our own metabolic waste. But bears have found a way around that problem, and that's still somewhat of a mystery how they do it. But they're able to take the waste from their own bodies. Like if you're using a little bit of muscle, you're creating a little bit of nitrogen waste. When that stuff reaches their intestines through maybe some gut bacteria that are in there and some other processes, they're able to convert that nitrogen waste back into usable protein and use that to keep their muscles healthy during wintertime. They're also able to maintain bone mass, even though they're not exercising, which is a remarkable feat. So yeah, the hibernating bear, it really is a physiological and metabolic marvel. They can do so many things that humans
Yet,
cannot do.
yet their body shuts down, but the female bear can also give birth. So her body shut down, yet she's able to give birth and nurse a cub. I mean, is that true? It's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's another remarkable thing about these animals. Bears are the only group of animals that will give birth and lactate while they're hibernating. So while a mother bear's metabolism may be slowed down considerably when she gives birth, she's still able to produce milk for her newborn cubs, and she still gives birth, in the middle of den. So, or excuse me, in the middle of wintertime. So that's another remarkable thing. When we think of bears being able to subsist for months at a time without food, it's even more remarkable when you think about mother bears, because they're going into the den with all the fat reserves they need to survive, but also the fat reserves that is necessary to sustain the growth of their newborn cubs. Older cubs, like the cubs we saw last year on the bear cams, they're not going to be nursing in the den during their first full winter of existence. It's only those newborn cubs that will nurse and drink milk in the den. But even still, I mean, that's an incredible amount of energy that mother bears need to produce for their offspring.
So sometimes when I get up after a bad night's sleep, I'm accused a lot of being a grumpy bear. When these bears are getting up, happy bear, grumpy bear, what's the mentality of the bear? I mean, are they a little groggy? Or do they, let's get to work and go? And what are we talking emotionally here?
I think right away it's definitely a groggy bear. There's a period of time after they emerge from the den where they're active, they're able to move around, but they're not back at that full level of metabolism yet, and even their heart rate doesn't seem to stabilize for a few weeks after they exit the den. You mentioned how their heart rates and breathing slows down considerably in the den. And it takes a while for that to get back up to normal levels, even if they start moving around. And sometimes scientists have called that phase kind of like a walking hibernation. In, I think, captive studies, there have been recorded instances of bears even kind of ignoring food and water during that late hibernation, or that period of time where they wake up um, from hibernation. So yeah, they're groggy at first, and then slowly their metabolism kicks in, and I think then it switches over to a very hungry bear, but it's also an amorous bear, and that's something that's happening right now too. Is the peak of the mating season for brown bears and black bears in North America is June.
So the bear gets up, they leave the den. We're going to see them on the Explorer cams. Describe the journey. I mean, do we have a sense of distance? Are they walking up big mounds, down mounds? I mean, where are they coming from? And are they scattered all about?
They're probably fairly widely dispersed in the springtime because there's not really a lot of concentrated food sources to pull them into one area. And also, if you're a mother with cubs, your cubs are coming out of the den. They maybe weigh like 10 pounds, 12 pounds, something like that. So they're pretty small and vulnerable. They don't have the coordination of an older bear. It's a lot harder for them to cross streams in rivers. So mother bears really kind of restrict their movements during that early springtime period to protect those cubs, and again give them another chance to grow. Uh, and when we look at Holly here playing with her cub, that's still a pretty sizable, chunky looking cub right there in the middle of summer. Right now, they're going to probably be about half that size, if not even smaller. But the bears largely are just coming from the mountains where they den. So in Katmai, the denning habitats usually between 1,000 and 3,000 feet in elevation. They might be hanging up there, but they're going to go where the food is too. So if they can find some green vegetation to graze on, they're going to do that. They're going to go into lowland areas. They're going to be looking for winter-killed animals, like maybe a dead moose or something like that, to feed on if they can do that.
So, I read that on one hand, I read bears are antisocial, they're individualist, yet at Katmai, I see them all interacting. They have a great sense of scent, like dogs. When the bears cross paths and see each other at Katmai, are they like, hey, how was your hibernation? What were you up to? How are your dreams? I mean, do they recognize each other? Is there a social hierarchy? Is there a meet and greet kind of committee? What transpires? Because they seem more social than we give them credit for.
They certainly are. Bears have a reputation of being solitary creatures, but I think that's just because of their in a lot of ecosystems, there's just not a lot of food to support high densities of bears. But we saw last summer, and a couple of those clips illustrate that, just how many bears can be packed into a small area when there is a lot of food available to them. And while competition for food still plays a really big role in how they're interacting with one another, last year we saw so many salmon return to Brooks River. It was an exceptional year to back up. With more than 4 million fish returning to the Naknek River watershed and several 100,000 of those fish moving into Brooks River, the bears were really sort of released from that competition for food. So we saw probably more play interactions between the bears last year than I had ever seen before. It seems like every bear was really well fed last year. And the bears are really, really smart. I certainly think that they recognize each other from year to year. And some bears we've seen like to hang out with certain other bears. They may ignore or avoid, bears that they consider to be a threat. But with other bears that may be playmates or former siblings, especially in their younger years, they certainly seem to seek out that type of company.
Last year was such an amazing year. Going to be a hard set of shoes, to fill. I know for the Explore audience, it was just so amazing. I mean, any thoughts about this upcoming year? Concerns, expectations?
I am curious to see how the bears, respond to this year's salmon run. I mean, that's kind of one of those ongoing story arcs, so to speak, with the bears. Because last year the salmon were just so abundant. It was incredible to see how many fish were in the river. We had never seen anything like that within the recorded history of Katmai National Park. So with that many fish, all the bears got their fill. It didn't seem like any of them had to work very hard for food, and that could change this year. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game is still forecasting a really strong salmon run for the Bristol Bay area, but I don't think we can expect the run in the Naknek River watershed and Brooks River to equal or even approach what we saw last year. So like half of the number of fish that returned um, it, last year, that would be a really good, very, very healthy run. So even if we see that, we can probably still see a lot of fat, healthy bears this year. And I'm also curious to see if we see a lot of new mothers this year, because it seems like the fatter the mother is when she goes to the den in the fall, the higher her likelihood of bearing offspring that winter. So that's one of those other open questions. We could see a lot of new mothers coming to the river this year.
Yeah, and the last season was like no other. I mean, I remember it began with wolves and bears hunting together. Then we saw all the cub bears, even on top of Brooks Falls, that I've never seen. It almost seemed like there were play groups. And I have to wonder, and it's an interesting thing, will the bears' behavior almost be different because humans will be back there this year, whereas last year it was as natural the habitat as they probably experienced in memory. And it'll be interesting to see if that changes or alters their personality, the way they play, interact, etc.
Absolutely. The bears last year, not only they were released from competition for food because of that exceptional salmon run, but they were also kind of released from competition with people over space. And that's one of the more long-standing conflicts between people and bears that have happened at Brooks River. The rangers and the National Park Service has done a wonderful job of making sure that bears don't have access to human food, for instance, or playthings. So those are conflicts that are ongoing in a lot of other national parks. But that, bears trying to seek out people for food or our buildings for food, that doesn't happen at Brooks River. It's an extremely rare event because of some pretty strict and well-enforced rules. But we occupy, when we go to Brooks River, and I'll be going up there this year in early July, we occupy the same spaces that the bears want to occupy. If we're going into the river to fish or to take photographs, for instance, we're in the spot where bears need to fish. So I think we might see a changing pattern of behavior from the bears in the river because we can expect more people to be visiting the river this year. And if anyone's going to Brooks River this year, I definitely encourage you to think about how you can reduce your stress or imposing stress on the bears, how you can reduce your impact on the animals themselves, because that's their home, of course. And we go to Brooks River, and it's more of a choice for us, but they need that place to survive.
Any I even would ask the Explore audiences. I'm curious, what would be the first bear we spot, on camera? Like that's going to be the first. There's always so many subset stories through the season, and so I ask everyone to be a fun, like pool a bet. Like, what will be the first camera, or who catches the first camera? Who catches the first salmon on camera live? Some type of pool bet. I mean, any predictions? Audience, love to hear from you.
Yeah, you could if you're watching at home right now, you can drop your prediction for the first bear seen on the live cams in the chat. But I'm going to throw out a couple of I think good bets. So there's a lot of bears that use the Brooks River area as part of their springtime habitat and home range. Not all bears do that, but we seem to see bears like number 32 Chunk, who was a Fat Bear Week finalist last year, kind of wander through the Brooks River area early in the year, and there he is, looking good from a couple of years ago, and he was even bigger last year. So he could be one of those bears that could show up on the cams. Another bear could be 128 Grazer, who was raised a couple of spring cubs last year, and so hopefully she'll come back with yearlings. Grazer's a beautiful blonde bear, really large ears, blonde ears, no matter the season, and she's extremely skilled fishing on the lip of the falls and in the far pool as well. A lot of times we see her catch her first salmon in the far pool of Brooks Falls. So those, I think, are a couple of good bets for the first known bear of the year, at least.
And then we won't make any predictions for Fat Bear Week yet, will we? I guess.
It's maybe a little too early, but man, I mean, some of the bears last year were so fat. I think they'll be coming back looking pretty darn good. So bears
Yeah,
like
I always think
747, Chunk, Grazer.
we need more trophies for Fat Bear Week, more categories. It's not fair. There's not just one winner. I mean, maybe the fans could come up with subset, um, from personality or different age groups, female, male, because there's just so much. It's never fair. Highly personal. I vote deny. This is not objective voting. This is very biased. I love my bear. Let's win. Uh, you just gotta love it. Maybe so that was really my evil plan. I just wanted to reconnect and talk about hibernation. And I'm so excited. Maybe the fans have questions for you, Mike. I know that I'll be watching and rooting for the Bears. I'm always excited this time of year. It's what I love about bear season and this live cam in particular is we really get to see nature working in harmony. I mean, it's light out, you have the birds, the bears, the salmon, mating, the whole works. And it's such a testament to the selfless work of you park rangers and also the fish and wildlife for maintaining the salmon populations. And it's one of the true times where you really get to celebrate nature working in one of the true pearls of the planet. So I always get excited on that level because you can actually watch this and realize there is hope. You know, you always hear about the doom and gloom. And so before I let, the fans have questions for you, I just wanted to thank you, your selfless work, and all the rangers and the state of Alaska for making this still such a sacred natural cathedral, I call it. It's really the best of the best.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I couldn't agree more. The Katmai National Park and really like the Bristol Bay area is an ecosystem that's operating at its fully realized potential. And we read about um, places in the past that used to be like that, where think about the eastern United States where I am right now in Maine. There used to be millions and millions of passenger pigeons that came through every year up until the 19th century, and now passenger pigeons are extinct. We don't have to envision or imagine or look at a history book to think about what Katmai was when it's operating at its fully realized potential. I mean, we are witness to it, and I think that makes it very, very special, and it's a real gem in the world. So yeah, Charlie, always fun to speak with you. I think
Hey,
we
we got
can,
to make
if you
some of
want. I think
those. We got to make some of
no,
those
go ahead.
bear cam caps. You look like a camp counselor at one of those movies, and I see that's a bear cam cap. I gotta
It is.
start
It
making
is.
them.
Let me see
Always
if I
wearing
can
dog bless you,
turn
but
it the
that
right
is
way.
super cute. I'm sure the fans are like that, and I'll skip the mosquito part, but I like that bear cam cap. That's great. Yeah, you look like you're ready to lead a group. It's great. Excited.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's gonna be a great bear camp season. I am. I'm really looking forward to it. And thanks for jump starting things here today. If you have time
It's an
time to
honor.
stick around, I think we have a few audience questions, and some of them that I
I'm
see
here.
are even addressed to you. So maybe we can jump into those. All right.
Okay.
Um, let's see here. One of the questions uh, was actually related um, to hibernation. At the beginning of the chat, you were talking about the different ways uh, that that bears hibernate. Um, and this question I found was kind of interesting. Would hibernation be comparable to a medical coma? And I in my personal opinion, and you'd really want to ask a physiologist about this or a medical doctor, but I don't think so. Excuse me. There's a there's just inhaled a black fly there. Ah, there we go. Get that washed down. But anyway, um, with bears, they maintain the ability to get up and move around even when they're in the depths of hibernations, and that's different than hibernation for a lot of other animals. Excuse me. So they're able to get up and move around. Their brain function levels are probably still are fairly high, uh, and they wake up frequently during hibernation too. So it's not quite a medically induced coma like we would think of it. And Charlie, while I get this insect out of my throat here, I'm going to throw this question to you for just a second. Charlie, can Charlie talk about the fabulous bear behind him on the screen?
Oh, you know, I wish I knew how to control this monitor I bought because I would do a walking tour. I was up in once Jasper, Canada, and I saw this painting, and I just fell in love with it. I just thought it really captured the soul. You know, most times you see a painting of a bear, they showing their claws and they look scary or mean. And this one, I just thought captured the sweet, divine kind of wisdom of these bears, and I just fell in love with it. And it was ironic because usually when we do a talk, I go outside, but the internet was bad, and then I remembered this painting. So I've had it for many years, and um, it's just kind of that divine connection I have with the bears. I mean, at the end of the day, I am like a big bear. That's why I think I've always liked bears. They kind of remind me of dogs, and people who know me explore know I'm dog bless you as well. And their personalities, the way they eat, they're a little grumpy, the way they roll around. So I have just channeling some bear energy behind me.
It
He's
really is,
really
a beautiful painting.
sweet. Yeah, he's my big baby.
And I thought I got that black flag.
What's up? Oh, are you okay?
I'll work through it.
Be careful.
But yeah, it's definitely peak biting fly season here in my area of northern Maine. So if you're planning on visiting at this time of the year, bring a head net. I thought I could power through it, doing my best for another few minutes or so. But another question that we can get to here before we come up on the end of the chat was somebody was wondering, are there park rangers stationed outside of camp to watch for returning bears and then give camp a heads up? And the way that Brooks Camp operates is very interesting and somewhat unique within the national park system. So if you're grouping all of the parks and historic sites together, it's Brooks Camp is quite different, just because of the concentration of people and bears and the sensitive habitat that all come together in that one location. So at this time of the year, there are bear technicians, as they're called. They're rangers that are tasked with watching the camp area and making sure that bears aren't damaging buildings and discouraging bears from getting too close to buildings in certain areas where we want or where the park rangers want bears to stay away from. And that's usually like near the lodge, for instance, or near the visitor center. So they don't have to watch too carefully at this time of the year, just because there aren't that many bears moving through the Brooks River area. It's really not until the salmon start to arrive that bears concentrate in that area in really high numbers, and that's when the bear technicians will be more vigilant um, in their watch of the perimeter of the Brooks Camp area. So that'll pick up, in a couple of weeks or so. It really kind of depends on when the salmon show up. It seems like the salmon arrive, the bears get the message pretty quickly, and they all sort of converge right on the river. And I'm gonna. This wasn't a question that the audience asked, Charlie, but I am curious to know this from you. Is there a particular bear this year that you're really looking forward to seeing?
Oh, no. I love them all. I mean, I is a fan of collecting snapshots myself and cutting videos. It's just seeing the transformation from the beginning of the season to the end. I mean, I must say that last season I was stricken by from day one, 747. The first day, he already looked like he'd been hiding out. He was huge the first day, and I was absolutely amazed by him. But the interaction of, you know, the babies and the moms and seeing them on Brooks Falls and at the play dates, it all just fills my heart with love. I mean, and I'm always going to pray and root that Otis is healthy. Every year I get a little nervous because he's getting up there. So that I think last year when we did the end of the year fundraiser, we called it the Otis Fund, and it was just like people poured their hearts out. So I know that and Holly's always a favorite, but um, I just knowing that the season is about to start. One, I try to lower my expectations because last year was amazing because nature isn't like a movie. We don't know how it unfolds, and I try to remind myself that. So I just pray for that all the bears are healthy, the salmon are healthy, the nature's working, that the explore audience gets to learn and grow and connect to the natural world, yet be entertained. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like this community and these talks that are so special. Um, but let's reconnect in like mid-season when you get up there, and I'll see. You know, I was joking today, not with the brown bear cam, but with another cam where I just wanted to go to the audience and say, you know what, the scientists can give these bears numbers, but I'm going to give them names. And like, so I'm naming because it's easier to remember. Sometimes I see them and I'm posting. I'm like, I can't remember the number. You know, it's like that's why like Holly 747, Grazer, Otis, so easy for me. But no, I just just really hope that the bears are healthy and the ecosystem's healthy, and it's a great experience for everyone. Um, it never gets old, looking at the scenery. We have 24 hours light, and the days that I just am in awe over is when Brooks Falls has the traffic jam and you see like 13 bears gathered all up there. And it reminds me of like a overcrowded runway, and somehow there's this ecosystem working. It's just, I don't know if there's a better visual sight in the world. And, especially when the bears get on 2 feet, it's so cute. But you're talking to like, I feel like I'm the grandpa bear here. I love them all. I really, each one brings joy and happiness. And I just hope they all get fed and have a great season.
Absolutely, very well put. It's hard to make a choice when you're looking at so many individual bears, and each one of them being a unique individual. They're really fun to watch, and each one of them can teach us a lot if we're just willing to take the time to watch. And Bear Cam lets us do that.
And it's like I said, one of the things I think would be fun this season that would be a little different, if possible, would be to do a live chat with someone from like the Fish and Wildlife Service that really maintains the salmon population. Because honestly, they're the unsung hero every year. We focus on the bears, but when I think about the journey of the salmon, I mean, every big apex predator is going after them. They go out to sea, sharks, orcas, I mean, humans. Then they fight their way up these streams to lay eggs and pass away. And I think we overlook the heroic aspect of these salmon. I mean, if you think about it, if we went to a doctor right now, they'd say, "Oh, you want to get healthy? Salmon." All the highest evolved creatures. And I would love, and I'm just so in awe because you hear about farm fished and wild and all these things, and somehow Alaska has managed to create this beautiful balance. And I think it'd be fun to add them a little bit more to the character because this is what it's really all about. Like we talk about the bears, but it's this journey of the salmon that's bringing the bears there and allowing us all to watch it. So I feel like they're the unsung hero, and it'd be fun. I don't know if you know anyone, but it'd be fun to kind of talk about them and their journey and what they're about a little bit. Because if you think about it, from the ocean to going up the rivers, every huge predator is after them. And then all they're doing is going to lay eggs and pass away. I mean, it's quite a story in itself.
They are the keystone of the ecosystem, and it's hard to overstate their importance for the economy, the culture of the Bristol Bay region, and of course the bears that we love to watch on the camera. Without salmon, there would be no bears to watch at Brooks River. Maybe a brown bear would wander through once in a while, but it really wouldn't have much of a reason to stick around. So we'll take that into consideration, and I can tell you for sure that we've already planned at least one salmon talk this year, and we'll try to incorporate a lot of those ideas into some of the other programs as well. So I think it'll be fun to learn from some of those experts who have done a lot of research on the fish themselves.
And I doubt we'll see it, but you could tell the wolves are more than welcome to come back and visit Brooks Falls. That was just amazing, seeing the wolves and the bears fishing at the same time. I just can't believe that. So, but again, I need to lower my expectations. I've gone over time, and I know people have better things to do than I could chat all day. So, just never stop learning. And again, Mike, thank you for all the work you do, and you add so much value to Explore.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, and I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to talk to people all over the world about bears and salmon and everything else that makes explore.org and nature special.
All right. Well, I guess, do we say I'm so glad we had this time together? Thank you. Are there more questions, or do we sign off? I don't know if there's a protocol here. Do we say 1, 2, 3, bye?
Well, I think I might want to take a break. I'm getting eaten up pretty well here,
Yeah.
even though I applied insect repellent. So, but I'll be happy to go back through the comments and try to answer any questions that we didn't get to. But my name is Mike Fitz with explore.org.
And I'm Charles Annenberg, Weingarten, the founder. And to all the fans, thank you for taking this time today. And thank you again, Mike, and have a beautiful day.